Hello and welcome to the Construction Corner podcast. I'm Dillon, joined with my now luxurious and new co-host, Matt Vetter. Matt, what's going on, man?
Luxurious and new. That's a new one for me. That's a nice title. Thank you for that. It's a good day today. How about yourself, sir?
It's uh it's been one of those days, man. Some good news, some bad news, some you know, weather changes, snowing like a bitch here.
It looks like it out your back window there. It's just freezing ass cold here in the low 20s and windy as all hell.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I used to live in the Midwest too, and one of the things that I think it's really funny. So out west, you've got like just these huge microclimates, right? Or all these microclimates. So I live at 3,500 feet. If I go 10 minutes down the hill, it's probably just raining right now. And if I go 10 minutes up the mountain, it's probably snowing even worse than it is here. So
Oh, that's pretty wild. How are the driving conditions out there then? Is it pretty treacherous where you're at?
uh, yeah, I mean, so it's definitely like very mountainous. Roads are pretty like curvy, mountain road. So right now, I mean, most everybody that like drives Jeeps and trucks out here, like I'm driving a car for the most part. Um, so it's two-wheel drive, not advised. Like we're in the Midwest, like that's the thing. Like when I lived in Indy, you could totally get around with a two-wheel drive, vehicle for the most part.
Yeah, not where I'm at. We moved kind of out to the rural sticks a little bit to get some property about 6 years ago, and there is no way to reach my house without driving down about 2 miles of the absolute nastiest dirt roads I've ever seen. So when we moved here, I've always had a truck, so I've been fine. But my wife had a minivan, and the minivan was great back in the suburbs, and got great mileage, had movie screens for the kids and all that nonsense. It lasted about a year and a half out here, and the poor thing was falling apart. It was ripping apart at the seams. So now we have two trucks.
I think that that's like every construction guy's thing is drive it till the wheels fall off.
Pretty much, yeah. It just sucks because I never have a clean truck.
Yeah, yeah. That's again like a man's vehicle. It needs to be, go to work Monday through Friday, take the kids to practice and games on Saturday and then go to church on Sunday, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So at least we got power back. That's the other big thing here. I was without power the last like 3 days. So
Oh, wow.
from windstorms, if it's not one thing, it's another, you know, here in the mountains. So
Are you on generator backup at all, or are you just out of luck?
so we bought a generator a couple of years ago, but it's the extension cord extravaganza is what we're running.
Gotcha. We've got a little gas one, but it pipes right into our circuit breaker, but it doesn't power our whole house. The main item being our furnace. So when power goes out in the winter, we burn lots of wood.
Yeah, yeah, that's that's for us too. All right, man. So with and guys, I we're gonna do these kind of little intros here. Just feels good to be talking to somebody else on the show and not just me and getting right into it. But for today's topic, Matt and I thought that we would be talking about communication with the field. You over the last year with COVID and everything, you're limiting people that are on site, right? It's a big issue that everyone is dealing with. You're only trying to have required personnel, so you've got to really increase that communication between the office, the field, your project managers, your coordinators, like everybody up and down the chain. So we thought that talking about communication between office and the field and really just everybody, right? Because your project managers probably aren't just on one project. They're on multiples, they're driving to multiple sites. And this has always been a issue, if you will. But with COVID and with job site restrictions has become even more, right? Now it's not just the office, it's home offices, it's the main office, the field, multiple job sites. So we wanted to bring this kind of into the forefront, and then really talk through some of the best practices and things that we found to be extremely beneficial. So I guess with that, Matt, I'll let you lead off on, your take on communication with the field, and I really just this means communication in general.
So obviously communication is key across probably all facets of any business. From my side, we have, you know, obvious communications with clients and owners that have to be kept up. We have to set expectations in the very beginning. Um, we have to be the experts providing knowledge. We have to be responsive, all of that good stuff. But when it comes to my field, or to any field, I guess, really, it is so mission critical to be able to have clear, concise, and correct communication with my team, because like you mentioned, we're all running in different directions. We're looking at a few projects at a time at least. And it's kind of like, my guys out in the field know what they're doing. They're all very well qualified to do what they're doing, but it's kind of like being out at sea in a boat. You know, a good captain knows how to steer his ship. He knows how to use a compass, but it's a whole lot nicer when you got somebody on shore you can kind of bounce ideas back on, and if you need help, if you need directions. So that's kind of how we play it at Schaefer Construction. And you know, it's just, it's got to be strong communication. It's got to be quick, because we don't have time for the dribble all day long. But we also got to be able to solve problems, and it comes down to that. That's the biggest key, is good communication, help solve problems, help keep things moving.
One of the things, and those are all fantastic points. One of the things that I want to add, that often in construction, and really, I mean, this goes to most anything, but often in construction, is we tend to have shorthand for different things, and we need to make sure that we're speaking the same location. So your northwest corner could be, is it planned northwest? Is it actual northwest? Is it, I mean, there's really, those are the two, but, looking at a set of drawings, in the fields, the people in the office are looking at it in, northwest plan versus actual northwest are two different things, or could be two different things. So it's important to be clear in that type of communication, which might mean that your email, your phone call, whatever, is longer, right? You got to expand upon what that is to make sure that everybody's talking about the right location. But that's critical, is to make sure that in that clarity, your clarity might mean that it's longer, not shorter.
Yeah, and it's funny. Two of our superintendents are also firefighters, and in the fire world, they have names. And I'm not a firefighter. I don't remember what they are, but they'll talk to me about the alpha wall or the this and that, and they know exactly what they're talking about and where it is. For me, I'm always grabbing them, saying, "Wait, hold on a minute. Let's speak English. Which part of the plan are we looking at here?" And we kind of bump into those a little bit, but technology helps a lot with that. We have a lot of not necessarily new tech, but we've brought a lot of technology into the field to kind of link back and forth, so that it's a lot easier if both my superintendent and myself are looking at the same drawing at the same time when we're having these conversations. It helps keep things clear.
Yeah, and I mean, don't be afraid to FaceTime. Granted, depends on the site that you're on for internet and all that kind of good stuff. But don't be afraid to FaceTime or send a picture to, do a Zoom call, or share a screen, and go through all that information, right? Far often it's been a phone call, and then we're, we're each looking at a set of drawings, the office and the field, and hopefully you have the same set of drawings that you're looking at, and go from there. But being able to share a screen and saying, "Oh, that's different than what I have," really goes a long way in helping that communication to be clear. I don't know how many times, it's, hey, what title block do you have? Right? What update are
What's
you
the
looking
date?
at? Yeah. And that goes a long way too, is to, again, clarity can expand that, right? If you're looking at drawing set dated, whatever, versus, or, version, whatever, can go a long way in making that communication clear.
Yeah, and I come from the days when I was building houses. We had the old Nextels, the big walkie-talkie bricks, and at that time, that was pretty cool. We could just beep beep and button to anybody's conversation at any point in time and demand answers. And but what we use now is, I mean, there's lots of apps out there. There's tons of different options. We use one called FieldWire specifically, and it's similar to like a plan grid, if you've ever seen that. It's not as robust as Procore, but it also doesn't cost nearly as much as Procore. But with FieldWire, my guys in the field have it all loaded on their laptop or on their iPads rather. I can be in the office. We can pull up the same drawing, and in real time, they can be circling areas of the plans, and within seconds, it pops up on my monitor, and or snapping pictures and pointing arrows, doing all that stuff in almost real time. So the possibilities are almost endless, and the communication breakdowns have, don't get me wrong, they still happen, but we've cut down on them significantly by investing in some of this tech for the iPads.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a ton out there. You mentioned three really good ones. You could do the same with like Bluebeam, create a Bluebeam Studio for markups. And you can have your own. So with the applications that you talked about in FieldWire, that's usually like an internal thing. With FieldWire, so I'm not familiar on FieldWire, but can you share markups and stuff with the owner or on a project, or how does that work?
You can We pay for it. So with our licensing, yes, you can export drawings. So you can mark up a drawing, attach photos, put it in report. You can do lots of cool stuff. The only downfall with FieldWire, and I hope they're listening because I think this is bullshit. But if we go to email direct an invitation, say to an owner or a sub for that matter, that's not already licensed, they will tack that new user onto our licensing and charge us the monthly rate the second they open it. So we can give an owner access, but now all of a sudden I'm paying for their access, which maybe they can work that out in a future update.
Yeah, because with like Bluebeam Studio, it's, whoever has the Bluebeam Studio license pays for it, and then, can share it with anybody. They just need to like download Bluebeam to use it or to log into the studio session, which you can do, I think, mostly online. So that typically works out. And most owners that are, at least that I've dealt with, typically have Bluebeam, so it's not like a huge issue. At least in owners that are dealing with like construction documents all the time, they typically have Bluebeam. So like a Bluebeam Studio session is pretty easy, and especially like during the design phase, it's a great tool to make sure that you get feedback from everybody. And then it's all logged within like a studio session, and you can export all the comments, everything from every sheet, which makes it pretty nice to have as a simple markup tool for all intents and purposes on the Bluebeam side.
Yeah, we have not dabbled into Bluebeam yet. I've run across it on a couple projects, but by and large, we just haven't. Um, for a long time, we didn't use anything. It was paper plans and emails, and then that was it. Or taking a picture with your phone and bouncing it back and forth. So in our eyes, we made a huge leap when we invested in FieldWire, and it's relatively inexpensive for what it does. And in all honesty, I'm sure we're only just scratching the surface of the capabilities of the software of the app. But we use it, like I said, for communication on a daily basis is great. We've automated all of our forms, so all of our daily reports, our timesheets, expense reports, you name it. We've automated those and input them, so they're all built into the app now. But it really comes in handy doing punch list type work. So we can very easily communicate to our subs, to the owner. and you circle the area on the plan. You can take a picture of the deficiency. You can put a quick description. You can tag it. The possibilities are really endless on that end, and it's super helpful.
Yeah, I've done a few punch lists. This was years ago because I've used a bunch of different stuff when it comes to punch lists. Because being an engineer on the job site, it's whatever the GC is using on the project. So we've used Plan Grid to do it, which works out pretty well, and you can filter by discipline, all that kind of stuff. Um, used Procore. We've um, used a few others over the years, and some of it is to just like walking with the GC, and they're they got their iPads, they're putting it on their system,
Yep.
and we just go through. So it's all done. We're not taking a license or anything, and just walking through as we go. They do the assignments, and that works pretty slickly for punch list. Where we're walking, it might take the walkthrough might take an extra, say, an hour or two to go through, make sure everyone's typing out everything as you go, but
Yeah.
it's done. Like when I get back to the office, I don't have to spend the next 3 hours, you know, typing up the punch list or handing it to somebody to do it. It was all just done in the field, and I don't think it. I mean, so one of the projects I punched was like a 40,000 square foot dorm when GC was walking with a iPad, and it might have taken an extra half hour. It wasn't crazy. Then it would have been for me to like handwrite everything out. Right.
You
It's
go back with your yellow notepad and try and remember it all.
yeah, or take pictures and make sure that pick the right picture, link to the right thing, and then format it back in the office and Word, whatever form we had to do punch lists, to then get somebody to proof it, to then send it. So that was a big deal, because then when you got back to the office, you're just done, right?
Yep.
It was already done. The subs had it instantly, and everybody could move forward. They weren't waiting on a report. They weren't waiting on whatever. And I think that's a big step forward in a lot of these punch list items, especially when people are trying to close out a job. You want that as quick as possible, and while everyone's still there before moving to the next job.
Yeah, and from a financial perspective, a lot of our contracts won't allow us to release any retention payments until that punch list is done. So the quicker we can be through that, the more efficient we can be, the better it is for everybody across the board.
Yeah, and I mean the biggest thing, and we're getting a little more past this, but the other thing that I found that was most often that we had to knock was O&Ms. Those were like the biggest things engineers that like we wanted to make sure all of our maintenance people had were the O&Ms, and that was the last thing to ever get submitted. They would finish punch lists well before an O&M was submitted. Um, and usually those could have been done months before close. But that was like the one thing we were typically very big sticklers for.
Yeah, we'll butt heads on that because I'm part of that problem, and we're very organized on our closeout, but sometimes getting all that sort of stuff and the warranty information, in my mind, by the time we hit that point in a project, I'm already gone. I'm running in the next project, and it's a breakdown in our system for sure because you need it. It's definitely important, but that's one of those ones we're still trying to keep up with.
Yeah, and I mean it like I've just done enough lead projects too with like commissioning agents and everything else, and they're looking for them, and then their maintenance guys are involved, and especially because most of the projects that like I was heavily involved with where it was repeat client, right? It was a university system, it was a healthcare system, so I dealt with the same four people all the time on those
Sure.
projects. So closing out, I mean, it's different if you have like you're dealing with developers or clients that probably either don't care or it's a one-off. But with clients where you're dealing with the same four people, and the same maintenance staff, all that kind of stuff, and they want to get up and running, it was just something that we always ran into. Um, so we were because we knew our clients were big sticklers for it. So, but again, like it's all in the communication pieces of it. It's, in commercial construction, there's so many forms, there's so many things to fill out that, if you're looking to move from residential to, and I don't know how many on here we have listeners that are in the residential side, but commercial, it's everybody understands there's a lot of paperwork. You can do a residential project with like 10 pieces of paper and be totally fine. And commercial, not even close. So it's, like everything, guys, it's making sure that your paperwork's filled out. Both the, in this, for the engineering side, like O&Ms were a big thing for us, right? As well as like punch lists. For, Matt, you probably have some other things that you're a big stickler on that we didn't care about at all.
Our Yeah, our daily reports are huge, and I will bark at my guys endlessly about these because there's a huge amount of paperwork, like you said. Everything is checks and balances. Everything is documented. That's one of those documentation items that we insist on because, God forbid, if something happens, and we get pushback once in a while. Like, oh, it's a pain in the ass. It's all this extra work. I've got to sit down at the end of the day, and field wires help that because they can actually kind of work on their daily throughout the day. They, as things are happening, as trades show up, they just tap tap tap, and it's added. But our concern as GCs, as owners of this company, obviously, is that it's not if something comes up tomorrow or even next week. It's in 7 years when, something breaks down, something happens, and if I find myself in a courtroom and they're asking me what happened on January 21st, 2021, and it's 2028, I can't remember yesterday. There's no way I'm going to remember, that far along. So to be able to have, now it's electronic, but even a paper copy of, okay, here's what happened. We had 5 masons on the site from this company. We had 10 carpenters on the site from this company. They were doing this, this, and this. We had these deliveries. We had all this equipment, and it's bulletproof at that point. So that is our internal kind of sticking point that we stomp our feet about quite frequently.
Yeah, and again, like the communication, the documentation is so critical, and I cannot stress this enough. I mean, new and experienced, everybody, like this is a big deal. So you're never going to be questioned on what happened yesterday for the most part. Like or last week, nobody cares. But you'll be questioned about it 7 years from now, 10 years from now, right? When the roof leaks, when something broke, and it's at the 12-year mark right before warranties. Like that's when it's going to happen. Not not next week, not at substantial completion. It's going to be some point after that. So it's important to understand the criticality of it, but over a longer time horizon, not something that's next week, next month, heck, probably not even next year. It'll be 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah, and we kind of joke, but we offer what we call inside our 1-year lifetime warranty. So, I mean, we operate on relationships. We operate on repeat clientele. So, within reason, at any point in the future, if something goes wrong, we're at the very least gonna try and rectify a situation. At the very least. So to have records, to know who to talk to, at some point in time, to know who to point at, or grab by the collar and drag into the office, we got to have it. That's frankly that's why I personally hate running projects myself. We're actively recruiting right now for a project manager because I hate all the paperwork. I like the conceptual side of it. I like the front end, all the record keeping. It's necessary, and I will stand up for that in front of anybody. But it's tedious at best, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and I mean so this goes into hiring a little bit and finding the right people in the right seats. You need somebody as a project manager, as a site super, to care about that type of stuff, right? You need somebody that cares about the details. They don't need to be, business development. They don't need to be chatty Cathy, right? They need to be the people that, make sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, the signatures are where they're supposed to be, and every day, right? You need somebody that's super detailed oriented to be in those positions, and making sure that, not only core values, but that they're a fit for that type of personality. And far too often I've seen that not fulfilled in companies. That it's the next promotion, right? From maybe a project engineer to a project manager. Same thing happens on the design side, where they're a great engineer, they should not manage projects. Or a great something else, right? They're a great manager, but don't let them design anything. Um, it happens both ways, right? Where some people are much better at management and getting everything done, clearing the path for the people to do the things that they're great at. So it really goes to, in all these, like with communication too, right? Somebody that's good at communication should be in the seat that needs to communicate a lot.
Yes, definitely. And another one of my big pet peeves as far as communication goes, to get back onto that, is I have to know what's going on at my jobs before my clients do. Right? So if there's an issue that comes up, which happens, I don't know, every day, something comes up, I have to be aware of it before my clients do, because the worst thing that can happen in my eyes and from a credibility and responsibility standpoint is if a client or an owner calls me and starts asking questions about an issue on site that I don't know about, that degrades confidence so rapidly. And in a business that is built on know, like, trust 100%, you can't afford to lose any confidence or trust that you've gained, that you worked so hard to gain. So that's a big it's not a sticking point, because our guys in the field are very good about it. But it's hugely important. They have to let me know immediately if it's something of substance. I don't need to know if Johnny put the wrong color paint on the wall. Go ahead and just fix it. But if Johnny knocked over a HVAC unit with a SkyTrack and we've got a hole in the building now, I need to know that immediately so that I can prepare and do damage control on my end before it becomes a bigger problem.
So let's dig into like problems, like that, or in that similar vein of, because this can go two ways, and there's some nuance in here, right? Of you need to know, but at the same time, you also need to have a game plan, and how bad is it? What are you doing to fix it? Right? It's one thing to make the call and something happens, um, but at the same time, like you need to have a plan in place. You need to start moving forward to fix that specific thing versus just raising the red flag and then sitting there, right? That doesn't quite work. So it's nuanced in like, hey, we're on it. We raise the flag. We're on it. We're doing this. Keep you updated type of thing. But maybe walk through a scenario, or a make believe scenario, if you will, and something that's come up that you've experienced like that, Matt.
So you just nailed it, and I guess I misspoke. I don't want my guys to call me with every little thing, and I surely do not want them to call me with problems. I want them to call me with solutions. Hey, Matt, this happened. This is how we're already working to fix it. And if I don't agree with it, I'll voice my opinion. But, I'm not just here to be a sounding board and to fix everyone's problems. We all have to be leaders of our own areas. But a good example I can think of is in 2019, we were building a car wash for a client, and it was about as high end of a car wash as I've literally ever seen. The owner spared no expense. I mean, over the top, great owner to work for, great project, but it was an expensive car wash. It's a car wash still, but really expensive car wash. So it was designed with attic trusses, so that there was storage space up above everything, so they could store their chemicals and paperwork and whatever. The engineer designed it with attic trusses spaced 12 inches on center, which is absurd. And I don't know uh, the last time you've been on a wood frame job site. I'm no huge guy. I can tell you I have a real hard time squeezing between trusses that are 12 inches on center. And I'm probably one of the smaller guys on my job sites. So we're loading trusses up. There's no room to move. And they get done with the entire wing. It was kind of an L-shaped building. So they got done with one of the legs. And I get a call from my then superintendent, uh, who is no longer with us. And he tells me that the doorway is on the wrong side. So basically in a nutshell, they put about half of the trusses up backwards. I didn't know about it until the owner already knew about it. So the owner called me first, asking what was going on. Then I called my superintendent. He told me, well, yeah, this happened and this happened. What should we do? I said, well, Mr. Superintendent, you tell me, what should we do? How are we going to fix this? Because I'm an hour and a half away. You're there looking at it. You let it happen. How are we going to fix this? And unfortunately, on that project, we had a few issues like that, and it boils down to a lack of communication, a lack of chain of command communication, where this owner was very involved, rightfully so. So he was out there probably more than I was sometimes, but for my guy to be talking with the owner about something like that, something major, before I even knew about it, it stirred the pot in a bad way. It eroded confidence, and it just caused a lot of problems kind of throughout the project.
Yeah, and this there's a can go a couple ways in this. So one, the communication chain. The two is how important like review is through a process, right? So yeah, communication for sure up and down the chain, like as things are happening, going. And I don't know how many walls I've either heard or seen built that were just wrong, right? And then everybody gets mad when you got to tear them down, right? Or they're not in the right place, or they didn't have the wall section wasn't right. Um, and at that point, a lot of people are probably pretty mad, but it like has to happen. So it's not only the communication up and down the chain, but like don't be afraid to review as things go along, right? So they get to the point of very expensive returns. It's never a no return. We're in construction. We build things so you can you demo and try it again. But is to not be afraid to have that communication and like, hey guys, let's just double check this, make sure that or something doesn't seem right here. Do we need to make a call to somebody, right? Whether it's the architect, engineer, the owner, somebody, if something doesn't seem right. Because more often than not, the team, and I'm saying that as a full thing, owner, architect, engineer, sub, GC, like everybody's more than willing to like come and look at something to make sure it's right. You obviously don't want to do that for everything. That gets like overboard, but then it's like the boy who cried wolf type of deal. But people are more than willing to make sure that things go right or to do a sample, right? You see it in masonry all the time. They build a small little test section and hey, is this good? Is this what you want to see? Or mortar color and all that kind of stuff. So like don't be afraid to have that for other trades, other disciplines. Like again, don't be afraid to make the call or put up a sample or anything like that to have something to go by moving forward on the project.
Yeah, because so much of construction it's a blend of art and science, right? There's finesse involved in everything. It's not just banging hammers or stacking steel, and there's a delicate balance there. So you want the guys on site, the superintendents, to be watching everything. You want them to be butting in and reviewing and asking questions when appropriate, because there's two things that are most expensive on any project. One is rework, and the second is guys standing around because they can't work. And you know, as a quote unquote paper GC, that is one of our biggest jobs, is to make sure that it's a well tuned orchestra out there, that everybody's got space. Work sites are prepared ahead of time for each trade. There are not guys stepping over top of each other. But all that comes down to communication on the superintendent's side. And so when they can successfully do that and orchestrate it and stay involved and keep their eyes on what progress is being made, ask the right questions, things go a lot smoother, because nobody wants to do it again, ever. It's costly, it's inefficient, it kills schedules, it kills budgets. But then on the flip side, nobody wants that superintendent that won't shut up and that is constantly yapping in their ear and asking them to check things and redo things. And so there, like I said, it's just this delicate balance, and not everyone can do it. I've seen guys go out there, and nicest guy in the world, you know, I'd be friends with him, but from a superintendent standpoint, they just can't hack it because they don't have that. I joke with my guys and I said, you know, to be a good superintendent, you got to have at least a little touch of asshole in your personality. You gotta be able to be rude sometimes, because you know, construction is still an old man's, or an old industry. You know, there's gruff, grisly guys and girls out there that you question their work and they're going to bark at you. But sometimes it's required. And like any good pack of wolves or pack of dogs, you got to be able to bark back. And some guys just can't do that.
Yeah, and boiling down like some of this in the communication side of things is you need to have like, some of the best projects that I've been on is it's not no communication, but it's minimal, right? It's communication at the right times at like an OAC meeting, right? Owner architect and CM, like those are the, those are good points to bring everything up. And then, maybe you hear stuff every little bit between there, depending on what's going on. But like the smoothest projects I've ever been on is you just hear about stuff at the OAC meeting. Everything's on track. It's on schedule. Nothing broke. and and those are great projects, right? Or the other ones that I've had that are maybe more complicated. I'll still say they were great projects, but I had maybe more frequent communication. So as the engineer record with the like electrician, since I'm the electrical engineer record, with the electrician and their foreman, because stuff just it was a complicated project, complicated renovation, and they just wanted to make sure that, hey, for this thing, can we do this? Yeah, man, that, or no, we need to do this, right? And that type of communication is also great, where it's a question answer, or hey, can you come and look at this? Sure. Can I be there in the morning? Yeah, we'll be here. Those are also great forms of communication. But the biggest, like the best projects is OAC updates, monthly meetings with everybody, and it's going great. But if projects are more complicated or something went wrong, I want to hear directly from the sub or whoever, prior to that meeting, so that when the owner is in the room, everything's worked out, and nobody's blindsided, nobody's caught off guard or mad at the other party for not telling somebody whose responsibility it is to help fix it, right? So again, come with solutions, or in those like OAC meetings, hey, we had a problem here, this is what we're doing to fix it, we're on it, right? That's what the owner wants to hear at the end of the day. But the team, I'm saying that as GC, sub, engineer, design team, everybody needs to be like on the same page going into that meeting, and nobody should really be caught off guard. The owner should be just adequately updated.
For sure. And, you know, most of the field communication can just stay in the field. But you nobody works their best when they're caught off guard, right? I mean, it happens all the time. You got to think on your feet. That's part of life. but I would much rather be able to prepare for a meeting, even if it's just an hour before, than be sitting in a meeting and have a bomb dropped in my lap and have to deal with it then. So, unless it's catastrophic, most of the field communication I don't need to know about. Um, I like hearing when my guys or one of our subs will reach out to our architect or our engineer to try and hash things out or talk things through, especially before they're looking at it saying, well, that looks wrong. If they catch it ahead of time, I love hearing when they're having those talks. And then, whether they like it or not, it always gets back to me somehow. But it's a way nicer conversation when I'm on the phone with my engineer and he's saying, hey, by the way, so and so called me last week. We worked through this and that, and it was really cool to see him being proactive, and it solved a potential issue before it was an issue. Perfect. I can't ask for anything better than that because, again, I keep going back to I play project manager right now a lot. I shouldn't probably be doing that, and I don't like doing it. So the less I have to spend on the daily stuff of a project is the more time I have to go find the next project to make sure that we're not just eating today, we're still eating in a month, in a year, in 10 years.
Well, and that's the important thing of knowing what your role is within a company, right? As an owner, you've got very different responsibilities than, somebody who's an employee, right? Like that's a different divide, but to know where your role is and, ultimately at the end of the day, we're all in sales, we're all in business development, especially in construction, right? If you're day laborer or an apprentice or even a journeyman through that in the trades and nobody likes working with you, well, one of two things can happen. You're either going to get fired, or two, your company will get not necessarily fired, but your company will no longer get picked for those projects, and you'll eventually not have a job because the company goes out of business because nobody likes working with you. So we're all in the business of sales, and to make sure that up and down, like the communication is good. You're not, overly dickish to anybody on the site, right? Like there's always some little ribbing here and there, of guys, but you got to know where that line is. And it takes some not only self-awareness, but awareness of others and what their tolerance for a rib is. Um, and where you just stay clear of it, but you know, job sites, right? You got to take your licks if you're going to give them. So don't give them if you can't take them. And but understand that like everybody's in sales, communication is really key to this whole thing, right? Infield, to the office, everybody up and down. No matter what your role is with on a job site, within a construction firm, within a design firm, you're still in sales, right? If the client doesn't like working with you, your company goes away. And like for most of us, our companies are not big enough to where you have a lot of people to work on different projects or with specific clients. And for the most part, most clients aren't doing work all the time to warrant a particular team for a particular client. So it's keys like that to keep on in mind, and a good recommendation goes a long way in the construction industry.
I love that. Reputation is everything. I literally just had a meeting this morning with a prospective business development guy that we may bring into the organization, and I had just that conversation with him. That listen, we're a small shop, small organization. We are a sales based organization, which means that everyone from the top to the bottom and side to side is a salesperson. We can't feed the beast unless we can find new leads and convert them into projects. So you nailed it. Everybody's got to be a salesman. Everybody's got to be always of that mindset that the conversation you're having today with whomever, it could lead to the project we're building tomorrow. You never know, especially in Southeast Michigan, but I assume it's like this, nationwide. The construction industry it's almost incestuous. It's so small. There may be hundreds of companies, but everybody knows everybody. everybody hears everything, and it goes outside of construction. It starts spinning off into the owners and the different shops and everything. So to keep that sales focus and to keep your reputation is absolute key. We actually started a program at Schaefer where I won't get into all the boring details, but we pay guys for qualified leads. And if that eventually turns into a project that we're building, we basically offer a commission on the gross profit. So it incentivizes our guys to always kind of have that in the back of their head. I could sell the next project, and it could be pretty lucrative. If you bring in the right type of lead, it could be very lucrative.
So I have a really interesting story on that. So and this is all communication, guys. This is straight up all communication. It's who you know in construction, I don't care who you are, design, GC, like anybody within the construction field, you probably have 10 clients, right? We're not selling books and widgets on the internet. We're doing things in real life. And, as a design firm, as a whatever, like I'm just in one office, right? Like, so as some of these larger firms, they've got 100 offices, and then each of those offices have probably 10 clients. But by and large, you've got, let's just call it 10 for easy numbers, but it's like 10 clients is what you have, right? That are millions of dollars into your organization. So it's all in network, who you know, and out of those 10 organizations, you probably have 4 key contact people. So you're talking, let's just say 50 people, right? So again, your list does not need to be a mile long. You got 50 people, maybe double it to 100, right? It's not a huge list of people that you have, to make a very successful construction company, design or engineering or anything. It's truly not that big. So the power of network is, I posted about on LinkedIn the roundtable that we're having this Tuesday, so it'll be today, on LinkedIn, and friend shared it, and somebody contacted him. And this guy in particular is not in the construction industry. He's just adjacent to it. He's part of the entrepreneur network and Arte that I'm a part of. Shared it. He called him and was like, "Hey, tell me about this construction thing." Turns out he works for one of the 5 biggest contractors in the probably world, um, and his like uncle owns it. So you never know where this stuff is going to come from, and but always like doing the right thing, putting your best foot forward, and especially when you're talking sales in particular. And this, again, it's all communication, guys. I don't care if it's to the field, to somebody else, to buddy in the barbecue, drinking beers. Like, it doesn't. It's the same, right? Be who you are. Show up the same. Show up, nice, good attitude. Goes a long way and all this stuff. But you never know where it's going to come from. Doing the right thing for somebody, who knows who they're connected to, and it comes back, and don't worry about the time or when it's going to come back. Because again, in construction, we all know it's a long game, right? We're talking about 5 years from now when they're ready, they remember that conversation they had with, somebody somewhere. So just remember, it's a very long game, and show up, with who you are in everything that you do, and it'll pay off in the long run. Again, it might be hell getting through a project sometimes, but just know at the end of the day, like, doing the right thing is always going to pay off for you at some point.
Yes, and stick to your core values. We'll probably do an episode someday here on core values alone, but it's so powerful, and your reputation is everything. It can take you years and years and years to build your reputation, and it can take seconds to destroy it. And there's another saying that I try and teach my guys, and I teach my kids too. And that if you do really, really good for one client and really impress them, they might tell 5 of their closest friends, their closest contacts, about how great you are. And they'll be a champion for you for sure. That same client, if you piss them off or you do something really bad or you really perform poorly, they'll tell 100 people, and that's just life. So just stick to your values. You got to communicate effectively. You got to be open and honest and ahead of things. And it's all about preserving reputation in this industry.
Yeah, guys, you can go back to did an episode on core values with Kevin Amaro of Roseville Rockland Electric, and in the last year, he 4x'd his company, and that was with moderate growth by sticking to core values and keeping the right people on. He could have grown more, but his top line revenue was 4x, and they'll probably do 10x this year in 21. So again, all by sticking to core values, having good clients, good reputation, taking the right projects, saying no to the wrong projects. So it matters, not just to bottom line, but you'll probably feel better at the end of the day too.
Definitely.
Okay, guys, I think we have probably beat communication to death in this episode. There's a ton of tools out there for you to use. Matt mentioned FieldWire, Bluebeam, PlanGrid, Procore, tons of great solutions out there for communication from office to field, doing daily reports, closeouts, punch lists, everything and anything in between. So again, you don't have to be the sharpest technologically to understand these tools. It's not, hire somebody in their 20s to figure it out for you, and get you rolling. That's really what it amounts to, right? It's like training your grandma to use an iPhone and now they can't put it down. Figure it out. Like, go and get some training. All these companies are more than happy to do training, or there's qualified vendors to help you through all that. So find the tools, use the tools. It'll help you to communicate effectively and understand that there's some nuance through everything that you do, right? Construction is just as much art as it is science, and increasing your communication abilities, your ability to talk, write an email effectively goes a long way. Matt, is there anything else that you want to add to close us out here?
I think you nailed it, Dylan. Only thing I would add is that if anyone still has one of those Nextel walkie-talkie phones, I would be all about resurrecting it because I still think they're cool.
Yeah, between that and a Nokia block phone, I don't think you can destroy them. All right, guys, that's going to be this episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Again, remember to tune in today. So the 26th of January, 2021, we're doing our roundtable. It's going to be live on LinkedIn. So mine, Dillon's LinkedIn page, or on my Cowabunga Studios Facebook page or Cowabunga Studios YouTube. You can go and tune in live. Make sure to submit your questions, and we'll have a good episode talking tech from everybody within the industry. So guys, that's this episode of the Construction Corner podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.